Biden, his radical Democrats, have stated that an election reform bill in Georgia that requires voter ID, requires verification that you're a human, that you are an American citizen, and requires assiduousness, that you've never committed a crime, that you've never committed a felony, that you're not someone who utilizes counterfeit bills or counterfeit votes frequently. And the bill is designed specifically to abate fraud in the state of Georgia. And what do the Democrats do? They attack it, because that doesn't allow them to steal elections. The MLB goes woke, and Demi Lovato on the Joe Rogan show says she's a pansexual, whatever that is. I'm Anthony Gonzalez, and this is Constitutional Freedom.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rockets would glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. God bless
President
America.
Donald
Thank you for coming back. So, recently the House of Representatives, sectarian on liberalism, and has abrupt and nagging control of Democratic control, if that's even something that makes sense or that's auspicious. They passed a bill known as H.R. 1. That bill is about election reform according to their sagaciousness, and the bill doesn't require voter ID. It permits criminals in jail to vote. It also permits non-citizens to vote. And specifically, it directly goes against the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states that the federal government cannot impose their ideologies on the states, because the federal government did not create the states created the federal government. The 10th Amendment also states that rights are not assiduously stated in the Constitution or go to the states, so that it's a more syllogistic decision that's being made instead of a partisan decision. The Founding Fathers wanted to cloister partisanship in terms of the federal government from imposing that partisan ideology onto all 50 states, because that would create totalitarianism, and America shall never, as is stated in the Constitution, shall never be a communist or totalitarianism nation. So H.R. 1 is very striking, because we've just had an election. The election was filled with a robbing nagging amount of allegations that this election was a subterfuge election. I think that's right. I think the evidence was prescinded from being heard on the sectarian, on the parochial liberal courts, the Supreme Courts, And that's striking, because if there wasn't any fraud, if there wasn't any evidence, if this election could not be overturned then why did the courts refuse to hear the Bunyan come out of evidence? Instead, they invaded the voices of 75 million Americans who supported President Trump. And I think that's an ignominy. I think that's striking. You also take a look at the mainstream media and the avarice they had to just, what is, as I've said before, sequester the voices of the American people. They curtailed it. And anyone, if you would have mentioned the word fraud and election together, you would be lynched, you'd be called racist, xenophobe, and Nazi. You'd be kicked off of social media immediately. You would be fact-checked, and I quote that, fact-checked, because a lot of times the fact-checking goes one direction, and it only points to conservatives, and I think that's an opprobrium. I think that social media, I think fact-checking in itself is auspicious, but I also think that it should be done to both sides, to conservatives and liberals, because obviously not everybody's perfect. People will say their opinions may be wrong, because opinions are not facts. There's a dichotomy between opinions on opining on things, whether it's an amalgamation about things that you opine on, and facts. Facts are real, opinions are not. Opinions are based off of moral ethics. They're based off of a moral, opinionated luminary and pantsy, and there's a dichotomy between facts. Facts are based on facts. And as Ben Shapiro states, facts don't care about your feelings. But H.R. 1, and these are the facts. It's not my opinion on it. The facts and my opinion actually in this case go hand in hand. The reason is, if H.R. 1 is implemented now, personally, I don't think it's going to be implemented in the Senate, because the Senate is a more eloquent body. It's the body that has a much more syncretized amount of eloquence, of scrupulousness, of assiduousness in terms of the way they speak. The body's supposed, the chamber, or whatever you want to call it, is supposed to conduct things in a more meticulous manner, in a more delicate manner than the House. The House is usually more partisan than the Senate. And the Senate, I mean, think about it. If you take a look at how indispensable it is, if you take a look at the 12th Amendment, which states that every 4 years on January 6th, the Senate and House gather to count the slate of electors from all 50 states to certify an election of the Vice President-elect and President-elect of the United States of America. That is the 12th Amendment. The preceding amendment, being the 11th Amendment, states that judicial power must be ensured. That what that means is that the federal government, the Supreme Court, cannot control the state Supreme Courts. They can't control their rulings. It's very analogous to the 10th Amendment, as I just stated previously. And I think it's a very propitious amendment, because the federal government, usually, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's liberal control, conservative control, I honestly don't care which ideology it's controlled by. Or way of life, I don't know. I just don't think that higher bodies of power, bodies that are more supercilious and having apotheosis of power and dichotomy between less and more devoid powerful branches of government, should not impose their ideology or their power to interpret or control what any Supreme Court or any legislative body in the 50 states of our country have ruled. I think that would be inappropriate. I think that would undermine the meaning of our country as a constitutional freedom type of country. This is what happens in communist states, where the federal government controls everything locally, and what happens in socialist states, Venezuela and Cuba, where the people have no freedom, they have no voice, and it's a complete adversity is what it is, and it's opprobrious as well. And I think the left, time and time again, abdicates that reasoning. They extradite what is integrating facts within their pantsphere, their erudite, because they are more about feelings than facts. And I stated in my previous episode, or 2 episodes before that, about illegal immigration, where they talk about the families of these people fleeing vitriolic and vituperative conditions in terms of their country and wanting to have a better life, but they don't care about the facts. They just abnegate the facts in a given sense, and they say, oh, so if you disagree with illegal immigration, you somehow have this apogee of malignance or malevolence within your physiognomy. And I think that's wrong, because illegal immigration undermines our democracy. It jeopardizes the safety of our citizens. It eradicates, and I would say it pretty much incarcerates jobs, right? It curtails the amount of jobs for American citizens. And it also, eventually, if the federal government is controlled on Democrats, if it's controlled by Democrats, the amount of fraud that can occur, the mass shootings and all that, is much more accrete from occurring, right? It's much more, the chances of fraud and of unsafety conditions happening in this country, I think, would occur on a much more monolithic interval. The reason is that because you have people coming without social security numbers, you have people coming without a sense of knowing who they are, whether they're American citizens. And thereof, because they're not American citizens, they don't follow the law, which makes it much more arduous, much more infractious to conduct the law in these given states. And that's why illegal immigration, and there's much more to it, but that's why illegal immigration is a much more exigent issue that you're not supposed to interpret your feelings regarding the issue, because obviously there are people that are fleeing from Cuba, that are fleeing from Venezuela, and these communist dictating nations, these totalitarian nations, and it's very appropriate what's occurring in those nations, and they want to come here, they want to have a better life. And I agree, America is the single most superior nation on the face of the earth, but you have to come legally and you have to follow our constitutional laws. That's what it states as the 14th Amendment, that you must go either through the naturalization process, or you must be a born natural citizen to be a citizen of the, or a born American, you must be born an American to be a natural citizen of the United States of America. Being a citizen requires a lot of opportunities, a lot of dignities in this country that are granted to you because you are a citizen. And it's very spontaneous to be a citizen, because people don't choose where they're born. And I think that obviously, that leads to a more broad discussion of illegal immigration. But people that aren't willing to follow our laws, whether that means, and you can say, yeah, they're living violent life. They're having the country they're living in is full of violence. There's a lot of criminality. There's a lot of drug trafficking and sex trafficking in certain nations, in certain communist nations. There's no freedom, and they want to come here to a freedom opportunistic country, the single most foundational country and constitutional country on the face of the earth. Then you're not supposed to interpret your feelings or integrate your feelings. You're supposed to say, okay, look, we'll accept you. We're a nation of immigrants, but you have to come legally, and you have to come with papers. You have to say, have you worked before? Have you been affiliated with a criminal organization before? If you haven't, then okay, that's auspicious. We're going to let you come, but it has to be done legally. It has to be done in a very meticulous manner. And then you can come, you can work, you can earn your futures, because the other syllogism being presented is that American taxpayers who work so exigently for their futures have to pay for the Medicare home, for the Medicare, the shelter, and the food of illegal immigrants. And I think that's wrong, because illegal immigrants have never helped American citizens. So why should Americans who have worked so arduously and really so onerously for their futures ever have to pay for illegal immigrants? It just doesn't make sense. There's no cogent regarding its propitiousness. And yet, time and time again, as I said, Democrats go at it and they say that's propitious to do so. But also something else about the Democrats and the way they influence society. I've said time and time again, the way society is coming is it's abnegating intelligence, right? It's abnegating the intelligence of society. I don't think our founding fathers would ever have been gregarious with this, because no one should be convicted with this. No one should be proud of this. Demi Lovato went on the Joe Rogan Experience show, or Joe Rogan show, whatever you want to call it, whatever you have the average to call it, and she just said outright that she's a pansexual, whatever that means. Let's go take a look at Demi Lovato saying she's a pansexual, because that's a very, it's not a word. And
fluid now, and a part of the reason why I am so fluid is because I was super closeted off.
You mean sexually fluid?
Yeah, yeah,
you like
sexually
girls,
fluid. Yeah.
You like boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything really. So I just.
What do they call that? Pansexual or something like that?
Yeah, pansexual.
It's hilarious.
So that was Demi Lovato saying that she was a pansexual. I mean, I think it advocates any reasoning. I don't know what that word means, pansexual. She said that she's sexually attracted to anything. Well, if I had a podcast with Demi Lovato, I would ask her right now, Demi, are you also attracted to little kids? Are you attracted, sexually attracted in the given context or perspective we're talking about? Are you attracted to animals? Are you attracted to whales? What are you attracted to? Sharks? You're sexually attracted to all these things? Or you what? So that means, let me get my cup. That means that you must be sexually attracted to my Trump 2020 thermos. I mean, that's basically what you're saying, what you're implying, right? And because she'll probably say, no, you're a freak, what are you talking about? I mean, animals, things, objects, liquids, cameras, lights, and babies, kids, they all fall into the category, into the subscript of anything. So, what is the syllogism being presented? That she's somehow a pansexual, right? I mean, what it's called is pushing a political agenda, right? I don't necessarily think she's a pansexual. I just think she's trying to brainwash millions of her followers to become pansexuals so that they can just go and vote for the more open branch or the more open ideological perspective on government, which is liberalism. And I think that's what's occurring. But it was funny, and then Joe Rogan's there saying that that's hilarious. I think it's hilarious. I think it's really funny, because this idea that somehow they also, and probably Demi Lovato, I think indubitably is very open to transgenderism, and I've said time and time again, transgenderism is not a word because words define things. You can't change your age, just like you can't change your age. Just like age is malleable, gender is malleable. Other things are malleable, such as intelligence. You can amplify intelligence. You can also dilute it, but you can't change the day you were born, just like you can't change your chromosomes. It's innately, because it was not necessarily something that God and the supernatural world would have ever augured or anticipated the American or the human population would have ever had the capability to just advocate full reasoning on and question their authority for in terms of biological and biology in itself. But Demi Lovato, I mean, society's just becoming much more hilarious. You got transgenderism movement, whatever that is, getting a flag instead of veterans getting a flag, or veterans getting a year. Now the transgender movement is getting a month in terms of a holiday, but veterans who extradite their lives day to day don't get a holiday. I think it's another disgrace. And you also take a look at what just occurred yesterday. I saw the article. MLB, I used to play baseball, but MLB is a Major League Baseball, right? It's a corporation. They're moving their All-Star game from Atlanta because somehow the election reform bill designed to eliminate fraud is racist, it's reminiscent of Jim Crow, and Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines is now saying that Georgia's racist because they are trying to give the people hope and to let their voices be heard. Let's go take a look at the MLB commissioner saying that they're moving out of Atlanta. I think it's a disgrace. I think a lot of people are going to leave, are going to stop watching MLB because of.
Yesterday, Major League Baseball caved to fear and lies from liberal activists. They ignored the facts of our new election integrity law, and they ignored the consequences of their decision on our local community. In the middle of a pandemic, Major League Baseball put the wishes of Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden ahead of the economic well-being of hard-working Georgians who were counting on the All-Star game for a paycheck. Georgians and all Americans should know what this decision means. It means cancel culture and partisan activists are coming for your business. They're coming for your game or event in your hometown. And they're coming to cancel everything from sports to how you make a living. And they will stop at nothing to silence all of us. They don't care about jobs, they don't care about our communities, and they certainly don't care about access to the ballot box. Because if they did, Major League Baseball would have announced that they were moving their headquarters from New York yesterday.
Major League Baseball, as you heard there from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, decided that they should give in to the radicalism of Joe Biden's administration and just leave Atlanta because somehow fixing elections and diluting an amount of fraud from occurring in U.S. elections is somehow racist. And it's striking. The left always calls everything that they disagree with racist. Anything that restricts them of power is racist. They all call the Constitution racist. They've called anything that really restricts power and indoctrination that they could potentially occur is racist according to them. But it's also hysterical. It's also striking that Delta Airlines, an employee of the state of Georgia, somehow thinks that Georgia cares about their opinion. They went out, and Delta, that has literally connections to the Chinese Communist Party, they bought a share in 2010 from a private state entity of the Chinese Communist Party, and they still hold it to this day, so they have like 25% of that stake. They went out and they stated that they are no longer going to be working with the state of Georgia because of their, and I quote, racist protection reform bill. I don't quote protection reform bill, I quote racist. Let's go take a look at Delta Airlines and its bumptious ideology regarding that it's now, that everything is racist nowadays. Let's go take a look at that.
Of United Parcel sent me a very interesting book recently about the history of African Americans who work for UPS. and it's stirring and it's a great story. How long before she has to come out? I mean, big employer, Atlanta, and I have to believe she's going to be out there saying something soon.
Well, you know, we reached out to Delta as soon as we heard, and I watched the interview with that Andrew did this morning with Ken Chenault and Ken Frazier, and we reached out immediately to Delta and we said, look, they're calling out executives and they're calling out corporations, and Atlanta is right in the center of all of this. What does Ed Bastian have to say? And they said he's going to have something in an employee memo. And it was within 45 minutes that we received this one. We don't think this was in response to the article in the Times or their appearance, Carl, on Squawk Box. I think that this has been, it's bubbling up. And I think that for Ed Bastian, today was the day that he had to put these words into a memo. And it's very clear Delta does not agree with the voter law that was passed in Georgia. Now, whether
saying that the election reform bill in the state of Georgia is unacceptable, according to the CEO of Delta, and it's striking. Their stocks have been decreasing in value on a synchronized level ever since they said that absurdity that they had the cupidity and the covet to say. Now, I'll tell you something about these woke corporations that are coming out. I think in a very, very facile phrase, go woke, go broke. Or be woke, go broke. Take a look at Coca-Cola, right? They also stated that the election reform bill was unacceptable and that it commits fraud and somehow that it's racist, because they stated, the Democrats, because they primitively stated in terms of their erudite, in terms of their knowledge, they went out and said that this bill restricted black people from voting, when specifically it never says that in the bill. And they said, oh, come on, man, give me a break. That was Joe Biden when he said, come on, man, give me a break. This bill, you can't even get water, really? What it says is you can't give branded political water bottles, which means you can't go in a Biden 2024 t-shirt and give a water bottle to the voters, because that's partisanship, it's indoctrination, it's political indoctrination. Thereof, it should be closer. But the Democrats don't pay attention to these things. They just go into conclusions without reasoning. And then they go ahead and brainwash millions of Americans. And these corporations obviously are really big, and they give an argosy and a profusion amount of money to these Democrats in their campaigns, so they go ahead and support them without even knowing what they're supporting. And I think it's another opprobrium is what it is. And the decision of MLB to move out of Atlanta is caving into the lies and the duplicitousness as well as the collusiveness of the Democratic Party. And also, you take a look at what Demi Lovato is doing, as I stated. I mean, it's in a disgrace. But the Washington Post went out and they fact-checked Joe Biden. The Washington Post, the most liberal news outlet in the history of ever. Since the gestation of time. I don't think anyone could have created a more liberal news outlet than the Washington Post. And they said, and I'll bring it up right now, they said that what Joe Biden said about restricting voter hours in the recent Georgia election reform bill conducted for voting, they said it was wrong and misleading. Let's put up a screenshot of the Washington Post fact-checking Joe Biden and his constant lies day to day. Right there, you see? Biden falsely claims that voting hours are restricted in the Georgia election bill. Right there. Washington Post. It's amazing. It's amazing is what it is. And I think that this disingenuous behavior coming from the mainstream media and from the Democrats, I think it's execrable is what it is. And I think it should be isolated from ever occurring. But you take a look at the woke corporations nowadays, and what they're doing is not just indoctrinating millions of Americans. Disney did the same thing when they fired Gina Carano from The Mandalorian. Now Disney's ratings are very down because of that, because they're a liberal institution many of the times, at least the people there, and they cave into cancel culture thinking it's somehow propitious to do, or instead I believe everybody should have the voice to act, whether you're liberal or conservative. Just don't kick them out because of their ideological beliefs. I think it's that facile to say. And, if this wokeness continues, we won't have a country for much longer. Our country will be made a joke of, and I don't think that should happen because America is not a country to be dealt with. It's not a country that you should mess with, and most importantly, it's not a joke. So thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate, and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return to the White House. And I wonder who that will be. Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
We have gone from America first to America last. Democrats are vicious. Remember this, it's true.
Who would have thought that within 33 days we'd be bombing the Middle East? You can French kiss the guy next to you, yelling abolish the police.
With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate, and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return. Who